All right, now the recording has started. All right, I think we'll get going. So more people will probably join. This usually happens the first 3 or 5 minutes or so, but very much welcome to everyone who's joined us so far to this webinar between Recuro and Viskan and me and Christian, who will be do most of the speaking today. We are focusing especially on how product-based companies can transition to subscription-based businesses today. So I hope that's what you guys signed up for as well. We have quite a lot of people with us today. People are still joining. Welcome, everyone. We have a lot of people joining us. It's interesting to see that you guys are from quite diverse backgrounds and types of companies. I know we have some e-commerce companies. We have some more physical goods, retailers. We have a couple of SaaS companies, I believe, as well. And it's usually interesting to have that width of backgrounds for people. So very much welcome. I think we are mostly Europeans here today, likely focused a lot in the Nordics, but I know we have some people from other places as well. So very much welcome. Great. Let's get going. And first things first, and let us just introduce ourselves. So my name is Jonas Åström. I am the CEO and founder of Recuro, and Recuro is a subscription growth company, and I'll tell you more about it in a second. I myself have a background from the media industry and from working with different types of subscription-based businesses in the media industry, in the tech sector, and other places. And my specialty is more in terms of marketing and growth and analytics around subscription-based businesses. And joining me today is my friend Christian from Viskan. Christian, can you hear me?
Thank you, Jonas. Yeah, Christian, working for Viskan. We are, and I've been working with subscription in different ways, but mostly for supporting it through different services for the last 15 years or so. So, been involved in quite a lot of different customer cases. So, yeah, we'll talk some more about that along the way as well.
Very good. And you are joining us from, Christian, where are you based right now?
We're based in Borås, in Sweden. We have offices in a few different places, but our headquarters is in Borås, the mail order mecca of Sweden.
And I'm signing in from Stockholm, by the way. All right, so just a quick slide about Recuro. So we are a fairly young consulting company, and we have decided to focus especially on helping subscription-based businesses to drive sustainable growth. We started out as more of a strategy consulting firm, but we have kind of adapted ourselves, and we now have a broader offering than that. So we work primarily with existing subscription-based companies, usually in the media sector, in the software industry, and in a couple of other verticals as well. And what we do for clients is, again, it's quite of a broad service scope within this very specific niche. So we do a lot of work around strategy consulting, usually around pricing and packaging, growth analysis, around organizational designs and platform selections, etc. And then we also have an operational team in Stockholm, which is a number of people who are digital specialists focused especially on subscription-based businesses. So they help our clients drive very tangible growth together with their own marketing department. So that's the very short intro to Recuro. Christian, you want to mention a few words about Viskan as well?
We are an e-commerce platform with, as it says here, an awesome subscription functionalities. With that said, we are helping clients in just about 50 markets around the globe. At this given moment, we are handling about 1 million active subscribers in our system. So we know a lot about efficiency and making this in a really good way. And really, I think that's a good combo with Jonas here. It's into the strategy, and we are more into realizing and doing what they tell us to do or tell you to do, actually. So.
And making sure that it actually works in practice, perhaps, which is a fairly important aspect of it.
That's true.
So we produce the nice slides, and then we hand them over to Christian, and then he makes sure it happens. So, yeah. Jokes aside, but we actually structured this webinar basically along the lines that we just talked about. So I will do a quick section first around, sorry, some people are still joining. There we go. So I will do a quick section first around why you should use subscriptions at all, and especially how that relates to more product-based and physical goods companies, which again is the topic for today. And then Christian will talk a bit more about how this can be realized in practice, and I think give a couple of good cases for from your customers as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I think will be very interesting. We are aiming to do this in about 45 minutes. So, and then we will hopefully have time for some questions as well. If you have questions, feel free to interrupt. That's all right. Or just type them in the chat, and we can either answer them directly, or we can kind of gather them in the end and do a bit of a discussion around it. But your input and feedback and your questions are very much welcome. So please see this as an interactive session. So. Okay, so why subscriptions? So first of all, as you probably have noticed, both as a professional and as a consumer, subscriptions are basically everywhere right now. And this is just a couple of examples, but some people tend to talk about the subscription economy and how that subscription economy is booming right now. So we've seen that for a number of years in a lot of different verticals, and some of them were kind of early into this space, and some of them are still developing. So the media sector, for example, I mean, if you talk about publishers and newspapers, they have been having subscription-based business models for hundreds of years. However, they have just recently been venturing into the digital subscription base or space, which is an interesting topic in itself. And you, of course, know the streaming services in terms of Netflix and Spotify and the audiobooks, etc. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. There's a lot of developments within more physical goods spaces, and we'll talk a bit more about that shortly, in terms of clothing, in terms of luxury goods, in terms of food. Some interesting developments in mobility, everything from cars to car sharing services to e-scooters to whatever it can be. And then there's a huge change as well, which has been happening for quite some time when it comes to software, so B2C apps or B2B SaaS. I mean that there's a lot of companies who are seeing a lot of growth there still. So the subscription economy is everywhere. So if we look at how this looks in numbers, there's a good kind of survey or index from a subscription platform called Sora. I'm sure you've heard of them. Every, I think, quarter they summarize like what's the growth rate of subscription-based companies versus the non-subscription-based companies. And I'm guessing this study might be a bit biased, but it still says that, I mean, a lot of the companies who are still seeing growth, and especially saw a lot of growth during COVID, and still are actually, despite a downturn in the economy, are actually subscription-based. And this study includes SaaS companies, media, manufacturing, IoT, business services, and a lot of other verticals. But again, generally a very much higher growth rate for subscription-based companies. If we look at this in more absolute numbers from a different survey, this is from Juniper Research. So the subscription economy in total, and this is actually excluding software as a service, because these definitions they vary a bit depending on what type of company you look at. But this this industry, subscription industry in total, it's aimed to likely double between 2022 and 2026, with a compounded annual growth rate of about like 20-25% per year. And this is driven a lot by the more digital services I just spoke about, so streaming, digital music, video, etc. But there's also a lot of growth expected to happen in the whole physical goods space. So a lot of growth there. So one might wonder why this happens then. What's the actual, I mean, what are the drivers between this? So I think the one of the most important drivers is that, I mean, the users now expect to purchase things as a service. So we are moving more and more from ownership to usership. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So first of all, it's usually more convenient. I mean, you just buy something as a service, and when you don't want it anymore, you just terminate that subscription. You don't have to buy something that you sell later, etc. It's also a really good way of getting access to new types of services, which you probably would not have been able to have access to if you had purchased them. So for example, I've been a member of a subscription boat club in Stockholm. So it's a great way for me, because I would never own a boat myself. I don't have the time. I probably don't have the money either, actually. But by using a subscription services, I can actually get access to new services and new values, which I couldn't afford otherwise. And another, I think, interesting aspect of this, which is often overlooked, is that when you have a business that is subscription based, that is actually, I mean, getting money from the user to be able to provide that service, those companies tend to tailor those services especially for those users as well. And it kind of, I mean, it's kind of naturally goes without saying, but it also adds to more tight customer relationships in the long term, and actually better services, I think. So we've seen this in the media industry, for example. So when journalism online went from being financed only by advertising and being financed by the users instead, that actually changed the journalism as well in a good way for the users. But then there's also the kind of company or the business aspect of it here, and I guess that's what most of us represent here today. So I think the fundamental thing here is that companies need, or at least want, stability. And having a subscription-based business is a great way of actually achieving that stability. So it's a good way of getting fairly stable cash flows. It's a good way to be able to plan the business long term. I mean, if we have more of a transactional business, you basically start each year or each month or each week from scratch, right? I mean, of course, you have some built up customer relationships, but you still have to do all the sales to reach those higher numbers. And in a subscription-based business, you are just adding customers to your subscription base instead, and that allows for a better stability and a better planning horizon, I believe. And then the final aspect here is the, which again I think is also overlooked sometimes, is the societal aspect of this. So again, I mentioned the subscription boat club that I was a member of. So I think boats for leisure, they have like a usage of a couple of percent per year or something like that. So those boats usually just stand in a garage somewhere like 99% of the time, and that's stupid, right? Both from a like resource perspective, but also from a just environmental perspective, is a really inefficient use of resources. So by sharing those resources and financing that sharing ecosystem through a subscription-based business model is really good for society as well. All right, so then we're moving into subscriptions especially for product-based companies, and let me clarify here that what I mean when I'm saying product-based companies, that companies having some type of more physical goods product, right? Something tangible that they actually sell, so not a digital service. I think if you don't have, if you have a digital service, this will still be relevant, but the examples will be more around the physical products. So we did some thinking before this, like what types of subscription models are there actually for the product-based companies, and we came up with 4 models, and I think it's interesting to reason about those different 4 models, because those can be relevant for you as well to understand like how can you actually utilize these models or drive growth in your own business using them. So the first type of subscription model for product-based companies, I would just call it like loyalty clubs. So Amazon Prime being a great example there. So I mean, Amazon, they are e-commerce and retailer, right? They sell physical goods, but they added the Amazon Prime, which originally gave mostly like you got free deliveries and some other perks and some rebates and stuff, but they still had that as a subscription business. And that's a great way for them of driving loyalty and also driving a fairly large subscription revenue for them as well, which is good for their own stability, of course. I mean, the drivers here for the customer is that I mean they get a lower price, or at least they hope to, and they get a lot of added benefits, etc. And that's why they pay for this. The other one is what I would call like replenishment. So when you have a subscription business which just sends out some type of physical goods, which is more of like something you need replenished all the time. I think Estrid is a fairly good example from the Swedish market. I can't remember what their American counterpart is called. Bumble something? No, I don't know. But again, they just send out razors like monthly or something as subscription business. So, and drivers here, I think, I mean, it's convenience. You don't have to go to the store. You don't have to remember to purchase these new razors or whatever each month. And hopefully you will also get a lower price. Thirdly is what I would call curation. So these are, for example, a lot of the subscription boxes out there. So where the user subscribes to some type of physical goods service package, whatever, they get it delivered weekly or monthly or whatever it could be. And the driver here is that they get something like new for them that's curated for them. So it feels like, again, something new, something original. I think it usually builds a sense of community as well, being a part of these services, etc. So Birchbox, I think that's one of the larger subscription boxes in the US. They do like beauty and care products, etc. And then the final one is the one that I've been speaking about a bit, which I think is really interesting, and there's a lot of development going on here, is what I would call just access. So paying a subscription fee to get access to some type of physical asset, right? It can be a boat, it could be a set of tools, it could be a stroller or whatever. And the drivers here, I think, is, I mean, it's flexibility, and that is really hassle-free. Again, I don't want to spend my entire springs or summer to like repaint the boat, etc. And you also usually you get a lot more for that subscription fee than what you would get if you had just invested in this product yourself. And the reason for that is, I mean, they utilize the assets better than you can do yourself. So that's the whole kind of business model. So those are the 4 different type of subscription-based models that we thought of. But there are definitely some challenges and some opportunities as well, of course, in kind of transitioning into one of these models. And I think these opportunities and challenges that I will go through now, they are quite generic for every type of product-based companies looking to venture into some type of subscription-based business. They are a bit different depending on which of these 4 models you are actually on. But we try to make them a bit generic. So again, the opportunities, these are basically the ones I went through already. But I'll repeat them because I think they are important. So first of all, just getting a higher customer lifetime value. That's like one of the largest opportunities or benefits around having a subscription business. You get loyal customers who pay more than if they would have just transacted with you all the time. And the second one being steady cash flows and a lot of predictability, right? We went through that. And then I briefly mentioned around the closer customer relationships as well. So, I mean, when you force yourself or when you transition into a subscription-based business model, you actually force yourself to understand, okay, what value do you actually provide on a recurring basis to your customers, and how should you tailor your products and your services and your entire business around that. And that's usually a what do you call, like a virtuous circle. So like you get money from your customers, and you improve the service for them, and you get more money, etc., etc. So that's usually a good cycle to end up in. So what about the challenges then? So I think the biggest one, or actually I think all four of these are the biggest ones. So I'll just go through them. But the first one, tailoring the value proposition and the pricing, and kind of moving from the more product-based transactional, taking that into a recurring value proposition. That's usually quite complex. You usually have to sit down and have a number of workshops and understand, like, okay, if we now provide this product as a service instead, what is the actual value proposition? How do we price that? How do we make it simple, both for ourselves, but also, of course. The second one, I actually bundle a lot of challenges into that one, but I labeled it as market operations, metrics, and ROI calculations. So, I mean, when you have more of a transactional-based business, it's usually fairly straightforward to actually calculate the effect of the marketing and the whole kind of marketing and sales, right? So you sell something, let's say via an ad, and that has a certain cost. You have a certain cost for the product, but you get that back instantly, and you can kind of calculate a margin on that right away and make that work. That's a bit more complex when it comes to a long-term subscription-based business, and I'll actually show you a slide on that after this one, so I'll come back to it. Third one being financial risk and perhaps need for operating capital. I mean, so let's say that you are transitioning from just selling your products to actually like renting them or having your users subscribe to them. That will probably affect your cash flow negatively, probably. I mean, you will probably have to invest in the product, purchase that, and then you expect to get that money back over some time. Then I think and I would say that this is the biggest one. So I mean, changing the mindset, moving from a conversion-based business, or a business that just focuses on conversion, to actually focus on long-term retention as well. It might sound quite simple, but that actually has a lot of implications in terms of, I mean, in terms of everything, in terms of your marketing and communication, and what type of systems you use, and how you treat your customers in general. So that's probably the biggest one. I'll just show you a quick slide on the second one here around the metrics and ROI calculations. And then I believe we got some questions in the chat, so maybe I'll just pause for a moment and we can have a look at those questions before we move on to Christian's part. So this is kind of the way I see how the metrics or the unit economics need to add up in a subscription-based business. So again, as I said before, if you have a more transactional-based business, you purchase something at one point and then you sell it at another point, right? And then you can quite easily kind of understand the margin on that. In a subscription-based business, it's a bit more complex and it's a bit more long-term than that. So if you look at like the costs and the revenue in a subscription-based business, you can kind of like visualize it like this. So in the beginning, you have some type of product cost. I mean, you purchase, let's say, a boat, to continue that example. And you probably also have some type of customer acquisition costs, depending on how you drive your marketing and sales. And then you expect that over time, you will build that revenue up from the subscribers if they choose to stay with you, so that you make sure that these initial costs are actually eaten up by the long-term revenue of the subscriber, right? And this is actually, I mean, this is a good visualization of the whole complexity of the subscription-based business model, and what type of long-term thinking I think you need to be able to be successful with it. There's a simple measurement. You can look at the lifetime revenue. So the lifetime revenue being what type of revenue can you expect from the subscriber in the long term. So it's basically these the green stairs here. And you can then compare that to what was the initial cost of getting that subscriber and what was the product cost. And then you can compare different ratios here. So let's say that you have a customer lifetime that's actually less, or the ratio is actually less than 1, then you probably have a not a very healthy business. So you're paying more upfront and you're not even making that money back in the long term. So that's pretty bad. If you have a ratio that it's equal to 1, I think that's still pretty bad, because you probably have other costs rather than just the marketing and the product costs, right? So and again, if you are over 1, you're probably on your way there, but it again depends on how much over 1 this ratio actually is. So this is just a way of visualizing a bit about the complexity of the subscription-based business model, but also how you can kind of think on this in the long term. So I'll wrap up my section and just let's look at the question first, and then I'll hand over to Christian very soon, because we're running out of time a bit. So let's see. Okay, so first question being, we notice great interest in subscription business model from startups, but those regularly have issues getting credit approvals from the banks. Do you have any tips for this? So I think that's a problem, because again, some of these businesses require quite a lot of upfront cash to actually get started. You might have to purchase these products, etc., to get going, and the cash flow might actually be quite poor. I think my only suggestion there would be to start in a really small scale and kind of try to prove the model first. And if that model seems to work, then it's usually easier to go to the bank after that and get an approval for some type of credit. Then a second one, how do you handle the comparison between the often higher costs versus traditional buy? I'm not sure I understand the question fully. Is it the higher cost of having a subscription rather than purchasing it from the beginning? Maybe the one who made that question, maybe you can just clarify it in the chat and I can answer it later. And then the third one being, do you have a way to choose one way or the other in subscription versus transactional? Can you add subscriptions to your established business model? So I definitely think a lot of companies are using both transactional and subscription-based models. I think you can make both of them work, basically. I think it's just around being, clear what works for you from a business perspective, but also from to make sure that it's easy for the user so that they understand what they actually are purchasing from you. So just making sure that it's clear, and I think you can work with both models, basically.
Actually, I have an example on that later on. So
okay, perfect. Yeah. So I think I have 2 more slides. I'll do them very, very quickly. So first of all, this is kind of the full scope that we look at when we look at how you can grow a subscription-based business. I will not go through this in any detail. We usually look at the strategy part, we look at the growth part, and then we look at what type of enablers are needed to build these type of businesses. So if you're interested in these topics, feel free to ping me afterwards and we can have a separate discussion on that. And then this is just kind of my summary on the quick kind of guide on how product-based companies can succeed with subscriptions. I think I discussed a lot of them already. I'll just mention a couple of things about the 2 last ones. So again, one of the big difference between a transactional business and a subscription-based business is I think you have to focus on the full subscription life cycle. You can't just focus on conversions, you have to focus on the whole retention as well. And that's something that is usually missed, I think. And then the last one, building the right enablers, that's what Christian will be talking a bit more about soon. But when you start a subscription business rather than a transactional based business, you will need some new type of systems. You will need to manage your data differently. You need to manage your reporting. You probably need different type of competencies or resources in your organization, etc. So that's interesting or important to realize that it is a difference in terms of just comparing to a transactional based business. Christian, your turn. I will now stop talking. Let me know when you want me to click the slides.
Very good, thank you. A lot of good recommendations there and good insights. So as Jonas mentioned, I'll proceed with some cases. I think we can jump to the next one right away. Just to give you some input on what we do. Here are some of our customers. We work with e-commerce, the transactional e-commerce, as well as the subscription part. So we kind of know a bit about both. And as one had a question here before, I think there's absolutely opportunities to combine both of them. But there's also a lot of things that's actually common that you have need of creating a good customer journey. It might be looking a bit differently, but you also need to build a brand. Customer service is always important, might be even more important when it comes to subscription. But of course, you have to do some pricing, international sales, and so on. So, and we work with a lot of different customers. Either you're a quite small one or you're a very large one. And with that, I think we could jump into the next one. So, as Jonas mentioned, we will be focusing a lot on the product. Of course, there's a lot of other type of subscription. I know for sure I have a Spotify, a Netflix account, and there's several software licenses that I use on my work that's on subscription based. But we have the replenishment, something that you consume that you need to refill along the way. It might be that you do a concept, or as Jonas were into, a curated deal, where you add on more things. And I think actually there's a question here later on that I saw something about. I think cost more on looking on a higher or a longer period of time, and we'll come back to that one. And the cars here, I think, I mean, most people are familiar with it, that you lease a car. You make that more affordable. We had Jonas talk about the boat, and I think that's a really good example as well. So you rather buy access to a product, and we'll see an example on that as well. So let's go for the next one. So we have 3 cases, each one representing each of these different ones. The Amazon Prime that Jonas showed as loyalty clubs, I won't go into that much. It's very few so far that's been successful on this. Amazon is really good on it. But you all know about loyalty clubs, non-subscription loyalty clubs. Rather, you get a card or a membership at your retailer. And I think here's a huge difference coming into these ones, because if you see that every retailer has a membership club or a loyalty club, how much loyalty does that actually create? I think those are great of keeping customer data and so on, but into the actual loyalty, I think there's other aspects. So let's go into also Skin Lab, the first case there. Also, Skin Lab is one of our customers. They work in the beauty sector, work on many markets. They're driving their sales through influencer networks. They have a low value per delivery. So they really need to be very, very efficient in what they do. And here is something that you could actually have a very low value product. But if you work with efficiency, and Jonas were into that, it's possible to plan. And here's also because you know what to deliver, when you should deliver. And by that, you could also plan the purchasing. You can plan the resources, the staffing, and so on. They've seen that customer service is essential for their business, and this is something that I urge you to think about. It's important in many other transactional business, but really looking on the long-term value of the customer, you need to be on your toes when it comes to customer service. Conversion is of course important, but really keeping the customer is the key to success when it comes to subscription, and that's the beauty of this as well, because as you know, most are, or it's getting harder and harder to keep customer data. You have GDPR, you have other legislations coming up and so on, and you are challenged in keeping customer data. But if you have an active relationship with the customer that you could have through a subscription, I think that that's a really, really good strategy. These ones are also really strong on working with analytics. And then I don't mean the Google Analytics, of course, that's important as well, but rather looking on the data, crunching the data, testing new types of offer. Okay, if we do this type of pricing, if we have these types of intervals, like the A and B testing that you usually have online, okay, let's do that and more. So I would say that they are really good on that, and I think that really creates a really good value for them, and looking on the long term. I think we can go for the next one. Middagsfrid is more on this curated or conceptual sales. They are working with groceries, but I won't say that they are selling groceries, because that's not their real product. They are selling a concept to you, which include groceries, but it also includes recipes, it includes home deliveries, and all of this ends up in the convenience. So you as a customer, I'm talking for myself anyway, I'm lazy, so getting this grocery bag every week or bi-weekly, with home delivery on Sunday afternoon, with the recipes, so I can test new flavors and so on. That's really something that creates more value than just the groceries. So I think that's also something that pushes the opportunity to charge differently from just selling, here's some salad, here's some pasta, and so on. But you put it into a concept. One thing that I can recommend here is, it might be that you think you should have all the flexibility. You should have the customer to put in all of these different ones into to an offer. And I think that might be good, but most people are lazy. So give them a really good standardized offer that's really clear in the message, and rather have them be able to change afterwards. So Middagsfrid, for example, has been pushing their My Pages a lot. And there they could do also upsells. So they have recipes that are more expensive than the standardized. So I can go for the slightly more expensive meat if I want to in one recipe. Or I could add on, this week I want to have some fruit or some breakfast as well. So with that, I could actually create more value on our current customers. I think we go for the next one. The third version here is actually what someone asked here about combining transactional and subscription. NetOnNet, for you who doesn't know them, they are omnichannel provider of electronics, mainly Sweden and Norway. They have a really good traditional e-commerce shop. They have many physical shops, but they also work with this buying access to make products that's quite expensive, like the phone, affordable. But in the meantime, work with sustainability. And then when it comes to environmental sustainability, in this case, we heard about the boat that's only being used 3% of the time, but their conclusion were that most people, me included, have a phone or two in my drawer at home. And it's not creating any value for me as a consumer there. It's not creating any value for the merchant there. So let's prolong the time that we used the products. And they offer like, okay, you could go for a 6 month that I always want to have the latest, or a 12 months, or a 36 months. And maybe I want to have a pre-loved phone. So I can, by that, decrease the cost for me and make it even more affordable. So they take back the products, refurbish it, and send it out again to an even better price. And they've seen that. They looked on the transport and see that, okay, out of the environmental effects, the transport in their cases is about 3% of the total effect of the climate effect. But instead, they're focusing on the production. So if we focus on the 97% of the actual impact they have on the environmental, they could really do some difference. Just prolonging the actual usage lifetime to being closer to the product lifetime, they could do a lot of difference. So in their case, they also have very thin margins. So by using subscription, they could create better margins. So I think that's a really beauty of it. It's a win-win: sustainability, more affordable, and still getting better margins into it. Let's go for the next one. And of course, I mean, this could be used for a lot of different other products. It could be like we have here, some computers, making them more affordable, or a tablet, trolleys, yeah, everything that's used for on a quite short time. I mean, buying a trolley could cost €1,000 or something. You use it for a year or two, but it's still good quality of these, so why not reuse it? Of course, there's a second market out there with a lot of different auction sites and different, but take this into and own your brand, own this business model as well. Office supplies, of course. Someone mentioned startup here. Okay, if you start up a company, then you'll have to get it going with a very few, with less funding. So okay, let's hire this office share and so on. Or the bicycle. Looking on my kids, they grow, and then they need a bigger bicycle. So they don't use the bicycle during that much of the time. And yeah, there's a bunch of these that could be really conceptualized, and you can buy access to it. And I think also that the consumers are getting more and more into this as an alternative to buy products. That the leasing and the car industry has been a forerunner in this, and that's shaping things together with other ones like Netflix and Shopify, that Spotify, that makes this an easy sell compared to previously. Yeah. Next one then. This is a quote from one of our customers. I won't say I'm fully objective in this. I really like this quote, of course, since we work with this and supporting this. But as he mentioned, selling is, of course, important. But what's really important and complex is actually what happens afterwards. And without mean that, look on the customer lifetime value. Jonas was into it, and I think that's really the mind-blowing and the challenge to think about. Okay, what happened, and what could you do if you are top of mind on the customer? What happens with your business? Because you will be top of mind at the consumer or the customer for a very long time during the whole subscription. So let's go into and have a look on how we've done it, the part that's after. And this is just a slide. Okay, we have a few parts in our e-commerce platform. Of course, you have some ERPs and such, and we can go to the next one right away. But out of my experience, I would say that focus on some type of subscription engine. I haven't so far seen an ERP that could solve subscription in a good way. They are really good on the finance part, purchasing part, and so on, but I haven't seen so far someone that's good on this. If you also could combine sales channels that's suitable or adapted for subscription, that's even better, because then you're really in control to the customer journey. So you could offer and create this nice offer to your customer, and you could go from sales to delivery with all these odd cases, ifs and buts coming up during the way, and trying to be so efficient as possible. So yeah, next one. There's many ways of looking on a subscription flow. Of course, I mean, you have many sales channels. Test out different offers. It could be like, okay, going into a very low price to start with. Then what happens with churn compared to having the standardized pricing or should you add things to the more loyal customers? So add on some free sample on something on the delivery number 5 or something like that. So there's test a lot of the different what works for your products and for your customers. And of course, that there is where you should be. So the order and payment should be automated. And kind of easy for me to say, but I think that's really, really important to see that you shouldn't be able to administratively work with all these subscriptions along the way all the time, but focusing on the offer, focusing on the customer service. And of course, I mean, delivery intervals, you need to have someone to ship this if it's physical products, see to that they do that in a good way. Eventually, there will be some type of work to hold back the customer, to keep them. Looking on myself at Middag Street, I've been their customer for 1 year, and then I ended. A while back after, I got a really nice offer to start up again. So now I've been a customer there for another year, and they use the data. They know, seeing that I'm a pretty good customer. It's probably a good business to offer me some good deal to start up again. I will probably be lazy and stick, and then it's a good business for them. So yeah, let's go for the next one. Into somewhat on the subscription management, your offer. We talk about subscription templates, and that's pretty much the offer. What type of products? How often should you be delivered? It's a pricing. It might be depending on what delivery. This low price to start with, or a better price as long as you go, or add-ons or bonuses at any stage. So that's kind of the offer to set up, which is then presented online in different channels. Yeah, go for next. Have a real possibility to have a good customer overview, because I would state that this communication, customer service thing is really important to go for. Track the value of the customer, so you have the data in one place and are able to talk with the customer in the right way, directly solve their errands, and so on. Yep. And of course, keep track of the subscription. I would say that in most cases, you might have one customer with one subscription, but we have a few different customers that works with selling different type of concept to the same customer. So that's kind of an upsell as well. But making changes, I mean, that customer service has the possibility to make changes. You could do holdback actions like discounts, changing the interval. Okay, I'm going for a vacation, postpone the next delivery. Those should be simple things to do for the customer service, but they should also be a simple thing for me as a consumer to do, if I rather go into the online and do it myself. So support both ways, I would say. And we track all activities. So if you go into the My Pages, we track that. If you do customer service, do a change, we track that. If you get the delivery, we track that. In this example here, there's a connection to Klarna as a payment supplier. Okay, so we can track that. So we can work with those, both triggered communication as well as that the customer service staff, and you can show this in My Page. You can see what happens along the way. Not only the deliveries, but actually what happens along the way. So I think that's an important one, to really be on top of what's happening with the subscription. Yeah. So some key takeaways then. When it comes to loyalty, I would say that it's harder to keep customer data. But if you have an active subscriber, you could do that. You're also top of mind. So if you want to sell something more, I think it's awesome to do this combining of transactional as well as subscription, because you're in an active relationship with the customer, and then that means a possibility to upsell on it. And conversions are great. Conversion is great, but I'm loyalty club as well. But would say that with having an active customer, acting purchasing customer, not only active as they react to your email send-outs, but actually buying from you, that makes a huge difference when it comes to loyalty. And when it comes to concept, it lets you plan both the purchasing and the staffing and your marketing. And that's reasons for you. Of course, the convenience reasons are something that's really good for the recipient. NetOnNet, where I showed you previously, they also add some services to their like insurance and so on. So they make something more than just a physical product out of it. But they're focusing on clear offers. Don't make them too complex. And instead go for the flexibility after the purchase. And what this all boils down to is, I would say, a great potential for a profitable company. Okay, it's a way to start up, but looking on our customers, and we work with both, as you know, I would say that in general, our subscription-based companies, or the ones that use subscriptions, are much more profitable than the ones that don't. And they're really looking into the lifetime value of the customer. So there's no need, no reason not to start with subscription, I would say. Go for it. There's a lot of good solutions to support you out there, and good people like Jonas and his team. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
It's a great segue. Thank you very much, Christian, and thank you for keeping the time, which I did not do. So it's my fault that we're running a bit late. So I'll just pause at this slide for a moment to kind of wrap things up, because we're over time already. So if you want to reach out to either me or Christian, feel free to scan our respective QR codes here and schedule a meeting with us, or just go to our respective websites and send us a ping there, and we'll talk more, of course, and keep the conversation going. I know there are a couple of questions in the chat, so if you want to stay and discuss, or if you have any other thoughts, feel free to stay. Otherwise, if you need to leave, thank you very much for joining us today, and feel free to have a look on our websites as well for other events coming up shortly that could be relevant to you as well. So thank you very much, but again, if you feel like staying on, please do so.
So we have a request there, focusing on B2B customers instead of B2C, and I think that's an awesome thought, because there's so much that B2B could be working, even in our portion of it, when it comes to products, like looking on the coffee machine or the office supplies or whatever. So it's both replenishment and conceptual and buy access. All of these affects into the B2B segment.
Yeah, I definitely get. I don't understand why this hasn't kind of exploded more than it has already. I mean, every type of physical good should be purchased as a subscription, basically, and especially for companies. I saw a great company. I'm not sure if you heard of it. It's called Norm. I believe that they're a Swedish company. They do like office furnitures as a subscription. And they have a fantastic, both business model, but also like the offering and how they structure the entire business. So basically, you just go to their site. I can actually see if I can show you really quickly. Norm. So don't buy office furniture, subscribe to it instead. And they've managed to do this like through a fully digital experience. So what you do is that you just like upload pictures of your office and your kind of layout of the office, and then they have a bunch of designers somewhere in the world that gives does a 3D model on this and suggests how they should be kind of structured and furnished, and then you can just accept that offer or do some changes in it, and then they just deliver and set up all the furniture for you. And you pay a monthly fee, which is surprisingly low, I would say. So they have about €3 per square meter. And when we looked at this in terms of like purchasing all this stuff from the beginning, this was seemed like a great offer. So I'm not sure if they're making any money or if they will kind of go bankrupt soon, but it's a great offering, which is a really good B2B subscription offer. So.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So any other questions or thoughts? Feel free to post in the chat or unmute and speak.
Seem to be crystal clear here.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very good.
That's a good sign. All right, so then we'll just say thank you very much, and we'll leave you with this slide. Again, reach out to me or Christian or our respective organizations if you want to discuss anything related to subscriptions for product-based companies, and we'll have a discussion on that. So thank you very much for joining us today, and have a great day.
Thank you.